Okay, so this is what happens with making these videos. A lot of people don't recognize, but I've had to start and stop a bunch of times, and now I'm going a different route with it. So back, and I'll have a lot of post-production work to do with this, but William Rufus King, and I'm going to pick up and stitch this together, hopefully in a very smooth way. Um, he lived with the future president in Washington, D.C., an apartment for 15 years. Um, he was labeled all kind of things, and I think it was Andrew Jackson called him a sissy. And when William King returned to Alabama and left D.C. for good at that point, the president he was living with wrote a letter bemoaning the fact that it would be hard for him to find another, and I'll get the exact wording to put this in here, but something to effect to have a kind of a loving relationship he had with William Rufus King. So homosexuality was one part of it, and then William Rufus King has another distinction in all the elected officials ever in this country, and it's not again mentioned, but William King was sworn into office as vice president while on foreign ground. He was in Cuba, and he was in Cuba seeking health care. Okay, so that's the story of William Rufus King. This is where the Honorable William R. King is buried in the Selma Cemetery, and now I'm going to take a walking tour and take you along to some of the interesting gravestones we have here at the Selma Cemetery. Some very interesting grave sites, and things were done a lot differently in those days. Nowadays, it's the houses and the gravestones and whatnot. They put a lot into it. Now we have these memorial gardens, which are just sometimes little bitty tiny plaques in the ground where a person is buried. I'm not saying one way is right and another way is wrong. It's just interesting how things have evolved in that area, in that way. But this, of course, seems to be the older part of the cemetery. The more recent gravestones here, like this one, was Lowry, buried 1919, and then Maggie, buried in 1928. As you walk through cemeteries, which I've always enjoyed doing for some strange, macabre reason, it's interesting as you walk through here and you realize that these people were here at one time, just like you and I. They walked this planet, and they were here. Here's one, Selma, Alabama. Wesley Plattenberg, born in Maryland, 1803, died in Selma, 1882, lived to be 79 years old. And people say, oh, we live much longer now, and it's not really true. What makes it seem that way is the infant mortality rate was a lot higher back then, and than it is today. Even though in the United States we're lagging behind other parts of the world in our infant mortality, we fail to realize, because of our propaganda, we just don't get it. We're just not as great a country as we think we are, and that's to our shame, really. Okay, here is the memory of Lucy H., wife of Stolenwork. 1832, 1853, 1867. This was all pre-Civil War and during the Civil War. They got higher fences around these than they did those houses, as if they're protecting the dead more so than they did than they do the living here. Fascinating stuff. So, 1834, Kilby.